Blood-red sunrise painted Portland's skyline as Clara Monroe found him again. Motionless, frost-kissed, his body slumped against bench 7 like a discarded coat someone had forgotten to retrieve. For one heart-stopping moment, she thought, he was dead. She dropped her bag and ran across the empty park, the world silent save for her ragged breath forming clouds in the January air. Her hands trembled as she reached for his shoulder. "Sir? Sir, please wake up." The old man's eyes fluttered, open cloudy blue beneath a tangle of silver-white hair. Recognition sparked there briefly before retreating behind the familiar vacant stare. He adjusted his threadbare military surplus coat and nodded, the same wordless acknowledgement he'd given Clara every morning for the past 11 months. "It's below freezing," Clara said, her voice catching. I was afraid you—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Instead, she set down the large paper cup and waxed paper bag. Today's double latte still steaming, the maple muffin still warm, from Driftwood Brew's oven. She'd baked it herself at 4:30 a.m. before her manager arrived. The old man accepted both without comment. His weathered hands, once strong, now gnarled with arthritis and exposure, cradled the cup like something precious. When Clara placed a napkin beside him, handwritten with her daily message, "Today can be a good day," he carefully folded it and slipped it into his coat pocket, where dozens of others just like it resided. "The shelter on Burnside has beds open this week," Clara said, the same offer she'd made countless times. "I could walk you over after my shift." As always, he shook his head and unfolded yesterday's newspaper, signaling the end of their interaction. Clara lingered a moment longer before heading back to the coffee shop, glancing over her shoulder at the solitary figure on bench 7, silhouetted against the awakening city. "You know he's probably selling that stuff for booze money, right?" Clara ignored Jason, the newest barista at Driftwood Brews, as she prepared the morning's first official orders. The cafe had opened at 6, and the pre-work crowd was starting to trickle in, laptops and smartphones in hand. "I mean it," Jason persisted, lowering his voice. "My cousin works at a rehab center. Says half these guys have systems worked out. Free. Food, sell it, buy whatever. You're just enabling." "Jason." Clara's tone was sharper than she intended. She softened it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You've been here 3 weeks. I've been doing this for almost a year. Trust me." He drinks the coffee and eats the muffin. "Whatever. You do you." Jason shrugged, turning to the customer, who'd just approached the counter. "Welcome to Driftwood. What can I get started for you?" Clara focused on crafting a perfect rosetta in the latte she was finishing, her movements precise despite her distraction. At 32, she'd mastered the art of calm efficiency, at least on the outside. 5 years at Driftwood had earned her senior barista status and opening shift privileges, critical for her morning ritual with the man on bench 7. She'd first noticed him last February, during an unseasonably cold snap. He'd sat there day after day, never panhandling, never bothering anyone, just existing in a world determined to look past him. Something about his quiet dignity had compelled Clara to bring him coffee one morning. When he'd accepted it with that solemn nod, a connection had formed, wordless but profound. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket, a text from Ryan. "Wedding venue says we need final count by Friday. Your mom asking, again, about homeless guy invite. Please, call when you can. Love you." Clara smiled at her fiancé's message. In 4 weeks, she'd be Clara Donovan, married to the kindest elementary school art teacher in Portland. Ryan, who'd supported her daily ritual without question, even joining her some mornings with extra food and warm socks when winter deepened. "Order up," she called, sliding the finished latte across the counter. As the morning rush intensified, Clara moved with practiced precision, her mind drifting occasionally to the man on bench 7. She wondered about his story. What events had led him to that park? What name he'd been born with? What life he'd lived before becoming invisible to most of Portland? By mid-morning, she was wiping down the espresso machine when Marcus, the regional manager, walked in, an unexpected visit that immediately set alarm bells ringing. He rarely appeared unless there was a problem. Morning, team, he said, his corporate casual demeanor at odds with the coffee shop's laid-back atmosphere. Clara, got a minute? She followed him to the small office in back, already guessing what was coming. So, Marcus began, leaning against the desk. Inventory audit shows we're short, specifically 1 maple muffin daily for the past 4 weeks plus coffee that's unaccounted for. Clara met his gaze steadily. I can explain. No need. Marcus held up a hand. Jason already did. Heat rushed to Clara's face, not embarrassment but anger. I see. Look, Clara, your work is excellent. Customers love you. But taking product, even for charity, is against policy. His expression softened slightly. I get what you're doing. It's admirable, really. But do it on your own time with your own resources, okay? Clara nodded, swallowing the defense that rose to her lips. She needed this job, especially with wedding expenses mounting. Great. Consider this a verbal warning, nothing formal. Marcus stood. Oh, and congratulations on the upcoming wedding. Ryan's a lucky guy. After he left, Clara stared at the schedule board, her mind racing. She'd have to adjust, come in even earlier. Use her employee discount to purchase the items properly. The thought of breaking her routine with the man on bench 7 was unthinkable. In a life increasingly consumed by wedding plans and future considerations, those quiet morning moments had become a centering ritual, a reminder of what mattered beyond seating charts and flower arrangements. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Ryan. Mom found the perfect photographer. Free consultation tomorrow at 5. Can you make it? Clara closed her eyes briefly before typing, I'll be there. Love you. The April wedding date had seemed perfect when they'd booked it. Portland's. Cherry blossoms would be in full bloom, the perpetual northwest drizzle theoretically giving way to tentative sunshine. What they hadn't counted on was the freak spring storm currently threatening to derail their outdoor ceremony. The tent people say they can still set up, but they need to know now, Ryan's mother informed them, phone clutched in one hand. Weather, radar displayed on her iPad in the other. It's a 50% chance of rain. Clara and Ryan exchanged looks across her living room, now command central for last-minute wedding logistics. 4 days until the ceremony, and chaos reigned. Let's do the tent, Ryan decided. Better safe than soggy. As his mother made the call, Ryan squeezed Clara's hand. You okay? You've been quiet today. Clara nodded, forcing a smile. Just wedding nerves. And I haven't seen bench 7 guy for 3 days now. Maybe he found housing, Ryan suggested. That outreach worker you talked to said they had some new programs. Maybe. Clara wasn't convinced. For over a year, their morning exchange had been as reliable as the sunrise. His absence gnawed at her. After Ryan and his mother left to meet with the caterer, Clara grabbed her coat and headed to the park. April twilight was settling over Portland, the air damp with impending rain. She walked the familiar path to bench 7, hope diminishing. With each step, the bench was empty, as she'd known it would be. Clara sat down, feeling the cold wood through her jeans. She placed her hand where he usually sat, as if she might absorb some trace of his presence. A park maintenance worker approached, pushing a cart of cleaning supplies. You looking for the old guy? White beard, green coat. Clara's heart jumped. Yes, have you seen him? They took him to Good Samaritan 3 days ago. Collapsed right here. Hypothermia, probably. The worker shrugged. Happens every spring. Weather. Warms up, these guys think they're fine, then bam, temperature drops overnight. Is he? Clara couldn't say it. No idea, they don't tell us that stuff. The worker moved on, leaving Clara staring after him. Without conscious decision, she found herself sprinting to her car. 20 minutes later, she was at Good Samaritan's emergency department, breathless and desperate. I'm looking for a man brought in from Lovejoy Park, she told the intake nurse. Older, homeless. I don't know his name. The nurse gave her a skeptical look. Are you family? No, but then I can't help you. HIPAA regulations. Clara stood there, the culmination of a year's worth of connections suddenly meaningless in the face of bureaucracy. Please, I've been bringing him coffee and food every day for a year. He sits on bench 7. He keeps my napkin notes. Her voice broke. He matters to me. Something in the nurse's expression shifted. Wait here. Minutes stretched into half an hour. Clara sat in the waiting room, checking her phone periodically. 3 missed calls from Ryan, 1 from the florist. The wedding seemed suddenly distant, trivial compared to the fate of a man whose name she didn't even know. The nurse returned with an older doctor. Ms. Monroe, I'm Dr. Patterson. I understand you're inquiring about our John Doe from Lovejoy Park? Clara stood. Yes, is he okay? He's stable. Moderate hypothermia, malnutrition, early pneumonia. We're treating him. The doctor studied her. You say you've been bringing him food? For over a year now. Every morning. Dr. Patterson nodded thoughtfully. He hasn't spoken since arriving. No ID, no next of kin that we know of. But we found dozens of napkins in his coat, all with the same handwriting. Today can be a good day. Clara's eyes filled with tears. That's me. I write that every day. After a long moment, the doctor made a decision. Follow me. She led Clara through swinging doors into the main emergency department, past curtained bays until they reached a small room at the end. Inside, the man from bench 7 lay sleeping, an IV in his arm, monitoring equipment beeping softly beside him. Cleaned up, in a hospital gown, he looked smaller, more vulnerable, but also more human than the bundle of coats and weathered skin Clara was accustomed to. We're admitting him for a few days, Dr. Patterson said quietly. After that, well, the system has limited options for homeless patients, especially those who won't communicate. Clara approached the bed slowly. Can I stay for a bit? The doctor nodded. 5 minutes, then you'll need to leave contact information if you want updates. After the doctor left, Clara carefully took the man's hand. His skin was papery, the blue veins prominent. For the first time, she noticed a faded tattoo on his inner wrist, some kind of official emblem, too weathered to identify. Hey there, she whispered. It's the coffee girl. You gave me quite a scare disappearing like that. No response, but she hadn't expected one. Their relationship had never been built on words. Listen, I'm getting married this Saturday. In the park, actually, not far from your bench. She squeezed his hand gently. I'd really like you to be there, as my guest. She thought she felt a slight pressure in return, but it might have been wishful thinking. The monitoring equipment continued its steady rhythm as she sat beside him, the world outside receding, wedding plans momentarily forgotten. When the nurse finally came to tell her visiting time was over, Clara reluctantly rose. She placed a napkin on his bedside table, today can be a good day, and left her phone number with instructions to call with any changes in his condition. Walking to her car, she called Ryan. There you are. His voice was relieved. Mom's been trying to reach you about the centerpieces. Ryan, I need to ask you something important, Clara interrupted. How would you feel about having a special guest at our wedding? The man from bench 7, he's in the hospital, but he should be released by Saturday. I'd like to invite him. A brief silence followed. Then Ryan's voice, warm and unsurprised. Of course, I'll tell Mom to set an extra place. Clara smiled through sudden tears. This is why I'm marrying you. Because I approve of your adoption of mysterious homeless men. Because you see people the way I do. Saturday dawned clear and cool, Portland's spring temporarily banishing the rain clouds that had threatened all week. In Lovejoy Park, white chairs formed neat rows on the greening lawn, cherry blossoms floating down occasionally like organic confetti. Clara stood in a small tent serving as the bridal preparation area, her mother fussing with the simple lace veil. Her wedding dress was classic and understated, ivory satin with subtle embroidery, comfortable enough to move in freely. Has anyone seen him? Clara asked her bridesmaid for the 3rd time. The man I told you about? Not yet, came the patient reply. But the ceremony doesn't start for another 20 minutes. Clara tried to calm her nerves. The hospital had discharged him yesterday. But when she'd called to offer transportation to the wedding, they'd informed her he'd already left, refusing assistance. She'd left detailed instructions with the discharge nurse, time, location, a note emphasizing he was a welcome guest, but had no way of knowing if he'd received the information, much less decided to come. The wedding coordinator poked her head into the tent. 5 minutes, everyone. Clara, your father's ready when you are. Clara took a deep breath, checking her reflection one last time. The woman in the mirror looked happy, expectant, ready to begin a new chapter while honoring what mattered most to her. The string quartet began playing, signaling the start of the ceremony. Clara took her father's arm, and together they walked toward the park's central clearing, where Ryan waited beneath an arch of spring flowers. Guests turned in their seats as she appeared, smiles and a few tears greeting her processional. Clara scanned the gathered faces as she walked, looking for one in particular. No sign of him. She tried to focus on Ryan, whose face lit up as their eyes met, but disappointment tugged at her heart. The ceremony proceeded beautifully, vows exchanged against the backdrop of Portland's skyline. As they were pronounced husband and wife, applause broke out among the guests. It was during their recessional, walking back down the aisle as a married couple, that Clara saw him. He stood at the very back of the seating area, partially hidden by a cherry tree. He'd cleaned up, his white hair and beard trimmed, wearing what appeared to be a donated suit, worn but dignified. He held his cap in his hands, watching the proceedings with an expression Clara had never seen on his face before: awareness, fully present in the moment. Without hesitation, Clara let go of Ryan's hand and broke from the recessional. In her wedding dress, she rushed toward the man from bench 7, ignoring the murmurs of surprise from the guests. "You came," she said, reaching him slightly breathless. He nodded. That familiar gesture now weighted with new meaning. His eyes, clear, blue, alert in a way she'd never witnessed, held recognition and something more. Clara did what felt natural. She embraced him, white satin against faded wool. "I'm so glad you're here." As she pulled back, she noticed guests staring, heard whispers. She invited a homeless man? "Who is that?" Ryan had followed her and now stood supportively at her side, his hand at the small of her back. Before Clara could introduce them, movement at the park entrance caught her attention. A black SUV had pulled up, and several men in formal attire emerged, moving with purpose toward the wedding. Ryan tensed. "Who are they?" The man from bench 7 spoke then, his first words to Clara in over a year of daily encounters. "They're here for me," he said, his voice rough from disuse but carrying unexpected authority. The group approached, 6 men, most middle-aged, all bearing themselves with a distinct bearing that suggested military or emergency services. Their leader, gray-haired with a weathered face, stepped forward. "Samuel," he said, extending his hand to the man from bench 7. "It's been too long." Clara looked between them, confusion evident. "Samuel?" The leader turned to her, his expression solemn. "Ms. Monroe, or should I say, Mrs. Donovan. My name is Director James Harlow, Portland Fire and Rescue, retired. We're here to honor a man who, 12 years ago, led 23 people to safety from the Riverside Tower fire before disappearing from public life, broken by personal tragedy. We've been searching for him since." Murmurs spread through the wedding guests who had gathered around the unexpected scene. Clara stared at the man she'd known only as a silent presence on bench 7. "Samuel Keats was one of our finest," Harlow continued. "After losing his wife and daughter in the same fire, they were in a different part of the building. He walked away from everything. His pension, his commendations, his identity. No one knew where he went." The former director turned to Clara. "No one, except the woman who fed him every day, never knowing who he was. Clara Monroe, you saved him a second time." Clara's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the man, at Samuel, seeing him truly for the first time. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Samuel's weathered face showed the ghost of a smile. "You never asked my name, you just saw me. That was enough." Ryan stepped forward, offering his hand to Samuel. It's an honor to meet you, sir. As the wedding guests looked on in astonished silence, Samuel reached into his suit pocket and withdrew a small worn box. He handed it to Clara. For you, he said simply. With trembling fingers, Clara opened it. Inside lay a firefighter's badge, tarnished but still gleaming in places, and beneath it a folded piece of paper. She carefully unfolded the note, written in shaky but determined handwriting. You reminded me that I'm still alive. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. 1 year later, Clara and Ryan Donovan stood in a small storefront on Burnside Street, watching as workers installed the sign above the entrance, Bench 7 Coffee and Community. It looks perfect, Ryan said, slipping an arm around his wife's waist. Clara nodded, unable to speak past the emotion tightening her throat. What had begun as a wedding day revelation had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. With Samuel's story making local headlines, donations and support had poured in. The Donovans had leveraged the attention to create something meaningful, a non-profit cafe where anyone could get a meal and coffee, regardless of ability to pay. Samuel himself had emerged from the shadows of his grief, accepting back pay from his pension, which he promptly donated to the project, and gradually reconnecting with his former colleagues. He now served as the cafe's co-manager, his natural leadership reasserting itself as he worked with other unhoused individuals hired by the establishment. Throughout Portland, the concept had spread. 7 smaller kiosks now operated in parks and high-traffic areas, each bearing the Bench 7 logo and the tagline that had become their mission statement. If no one else sees you, we do. As they prepared for the grand opening, Samuel approached, carrying a tray with 3 lattes. For the founders, he said, setting it down on a nearby table. Better than your early morning deliveries, if I do say so myself. Clara smiled, remembering those silent exchanges that had somehow contained everything that mattered. I don't know. Those had a certain charm. Samuel's eyes, now clear and present, held the wisdom of someone who had lost everything and found a way back. You know, I sat on that bench for 3 years before you came along. Plenty of people gave me things, money, food, clothes. But you were the first one who saw me as a person worth acknowledging day after day, with no expectation of change or gratitude. I just did what felt right, Clara said softly. Samuel nodded. That's the thing about small acts of kindness. You never know which one might save someone who's drowning in plain sight. Outside, a line had begun to form. Their first customers, many from the neighborhood's unhoused population, others from nearby businesses and apartments. Each would be served the same way, with the same respect and dignity. What had started with a double latte and a maple muffin had become something neither Clara nor Samuel could have imagined on those quiet mornings in the park. Something more powerful than charity, more lasting than a single moment of connection. They had created a ripple effect of recognition, the simple, revolutionary act of seeing each other's humanity across the invisible barriers of circumstance. And it all began because one woman refused to look away from the man on Bench 7,